Hey folks, this is the first of two videos on how to improvise over the Benny Golson composition, I Remember Clifford. Full disclaimer up front. Don't just watch these two videos and think, okay, now I know how to improvise over this tune, that's all I need to do. This is not even the tip of the iceberg. This is looking at the tip of the iceberg from a distance and starting to get some ideas about how to climb the iceberg. Keep in mind that as jazz musicians, and really musicians in any improvisational tradition, your goal is twofold. The first thing to do is to study what the great musicians before us have done, learn their approach, transcribe solos. I cannot stress that enough. That's really important. Read transcriptions of other people's solos as well. And then step two is to find your own voice. Say, how can I create my own ideas and my own approach after I've studied what other people have done? So this video represents one of two approaches I'm going to be talking about for soloing over this tune. The first approach in this video is going to focus on more of a harmonic-based approach, where we're thinking about each chord and how to create melodic lines moving between the chords in the song. The second video is going to focus more on key centers and how you can think about what key you're in for each section of the tune. Quick note about Benny Golson before we jump in. If you're not familiar with Benny Golson and his work, do yourself a huge favor. Go ahead and just, do a search of his music. Prolific, brilliant composer, arranger, saxophonist, wrote some amazing compositions and was an accomplished improviser and performer as well. Really one of the giants of jazz. And this composition, I Remember Clifford, is a beautiful tribute he wrote to another brilliant jazz musician, Clifford Brown, who tragically died in a car accident very young, just at the height of his career. All right, so let's dive into this tune. There's an intro. It's really a beautiful intro, and a coda that's also beautiful. We're not going to be focusing on those sections of the song simply because people don't typically improvise over those when this tune is performed. That's not to say you can't, but in the interest of time for this video and the next one, I'm going to focus on the two A sections, B section, and last A section. So this is a traditional AABA form. The first A has a first ending with its own chord changes, and the second A has a second ending with its own chord changes. And then what's interesting is that the last A section is very similar in terms of the harmonic structure to the second one. There's just a little bit of a difference. I'm not going to talk as much about key centers in this video. That's going to be discussed more in the second video. So if you're looking to approach soloing on this from a key-based perspective, go ahead and go to the next video. But even if you're primarily a linear player who doesn't really think about playing the changes, I strongly encourage you to still watch this video, as you can get ideas for how to navigate the chords. So what I'm going to do first is play a solo where I'm really using this harmonic approach. I'm going to play over just the first four measures to show how you can really use chord tones and arpeggios, what is sometimes referred to as change running, or actually playing arpeggios of the chords to create melodic lines to make a solo. This is the first measure, first A, starting on the E flat major 7, which is the one chord in the key of E flat. Right, so that's just the first four measures. Now, a lot of what I was using was created based on thinking about arpeggios. So the first thing I recommend doing, especially if you're a linear player and not a person who typically plays chords like a comping instrument like piano or guitar, is to go ahead and literally do root 3, 5, 7 arpeggio of every chord. I'll do that with you so we can hear what that sounds like. All right, so we have our E flat major 7, root, 3rd, 5th, 7, G7, A flat major 7, A fully diminished 7, B flat 7, B fully diminished 7, and C minor, which sometimes you'll see that C minor 7 on the first beat of the fourth measure, change to a C minor 7 or a C minor 7 over B flat in the next measure. Don't worry too much about that right now. But the main thing is really hearing that movement of the individual chords and noticing how there's actually this chromatic line that's created at the bottom of each chord. So the E flat major 7, and then we have G7, A flat major 7, A fully diminished 7, B flat 7, B fully diminished 7, C. Right? This is a classic thing that you find in a lot of traditional Black American styles. Jazz, Black gospel music, blues. Just to put this in context, you have heard this sound before if you've listened to any of these styles. E flat major 7, G7, A flat major 7, A fully diminished 7, B flat 7. I'm adding the 13 and the 9 of the B flat 7 for some additional texture. B fully diminished 7, and then the C minor 7. Right? So you see that walk up. Right? Classic move. Right? So what I want to do now is we're going to go beyond just playing the basic arpeggios of each chord. Right? And I'm actually going to think about how can I create a melodic line. One thing to do is play an arpeggio shape for one chord, let's say the E flat major 7. I'm going to make it very simple right now. I'm just going to do root 3, 5, 7. And now what I'm going to do is hang out on that D, because it's a shared note that we also find in the G7. In the E flat major 7, the D is the 7th. In the G7, it's the 5th. So you don't have to play a lot of notes to communicate something. Just hang out on that note. And so the first strategy I would recommend is finding shared notes between the chords. On a ballad, I think this is especially important. Ballads, it can be very easy to play a lot of notes and basically talk loud but say nothing, right? Play a lot but not really communicate anything impactful. So even doing very simple ideas can be effective. Even just hanging out on that D. Very simple what I just played, right? And notice how I also used a very narrow range. I was only playing a few notes, but I was carefully thinking about what notes are shared between the chords and how can I create a line. Just like the D that's shared between the E flat major 7 and the G7, the C is shared between the A flat major 7 and the A fully diminished 7. You could also think about it, if you wanted to keep using that C, as the 9th of the B flat 7. So the idea here is try to, and this is again just a strategy, not the end-all be-all, but an approach is how can I play the least notes possible and make them fit the chords, right? So that's one approach. Now practice starting the arpeggio on different notes. Notice how I just basically did root 3, 5, 7. Well, this time I'm going to do a different shape. I'm going to do descending 5, 3, root 7. And then I'm going to use two more notes as passing tones, this D flat and C, to connect to the B natural. In context. Now what did I do there? 5, 3, 1, 7, 1, passing tone to the third of the G7, which is B. Right? So that's just another example of how you can think about chords, but not just doing chords the entire time, right? Okay, so this is an approach that can be very helpful throughout this whole tune, is actually playing the changes. In the next video, I'm going to break down the key centers of the tune and how you can think about soloing using that approach.